Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be counting down my 10 rock and metal desert island albums. These are the 10 albums I can't live without from rock and metal, and obviously a difficult list to make here because ideally I'd like to take all of these albums with me, but if I was stranded on an abandoned island and can only listen to 10 albums for the rest of my life, these are the records I would choose, and very hard to make, and even to make things harder for myself, I do have a few rules in place here. So 5 rock and 5 metal. I'll be breaking them up here for this video. The first half will be my rock picks, the second half will be my metal picks, and also no live albums or compilations because I just feel like that's cheating, because you can pull songs from several studio albums on a live album. So just sticking with, the studio catalog of the bands I'm going to be including on this countdown. So with that in mind, let's get started with my 5 from the rock category. Let's get things started here from the rock category with Alice Cooper and Killer. This album is, in my opinion, the best from the original Alice Cooper group here, that of course being Alice Cooper, Glenn Buxton, Michael Bruce, Dennis Dunaway, and Neil Smith. This album, I think, finds the perfect balance between, the humor of the original Alice Cooper group and also kind of that darker side that, shocked so many people when these albums first came out. And so I don't feel like after, Love It to Death and going forward, the Alice Cooper band made a bad record, but this is by far the one that I listen to the most. Just perfect here from top to bottom, with tracks like Under My Wheels, Be My Lover, Halo of Flies, Desperado is so great. I love the lyrics on that track. You Drive Me Nervous, Yeah, 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 two awesome deep cuts, Dead Babies and Killer to close things out. Awesome stuff here, awesome work by the band and by producer Bob Ezrin. Just killer stuff here, no pun intended, by the original Alice Cooper group, and like I said, probably the one album from them that I listen to more than any other. Next, I'm going to go with Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, the perfect Floyd album in my opinion here. Of course, the lineup here, you had the classic prime era lineup of Roger Waters, David Gilmour, Nick Mason, and Richard Wright, and this album is proggy in places, right, with Shine On You Crazy Diamond parts 1 through 5, and then 6 through 9 to really bookend that record here. Welcome to the Machine is fantastic. Have a Cigar featuring Roy Harper. Really a great track there. Great vocals by Harper, who, this is one of the only songs in the Pink Floyd catalog where they have an outside vocalist. I believe the other one being Great Gig in the Sky. Wish You Were Here, the title track, of course, a radio hit. It's fantastic. It's a live staple as well. So recognizable. I just wish it had one more chorus. It's one of those songs where I feel like it ends too soon, but that's just because you can't have too much of a good thing. This album is incredible here, and really is the pinnacle, I think, of that classic lineup of Pink Floyd, and everything they did with Roger Waters at the helm as the thematic leader. I don't think it gets any better than this here. Wish You Were Here. Oh, of course, the whole album is kind of a tribute to Syd Barrett. Great work in my opinion, and just like what I was talking about with Alice Cooper and Killer, probably the one Pink Floyd album that I go to the most. Following that up here, we have a bit of a sentimental pick because this is one of those albums that was a gateway record for me in the sense that it opened up my ears to so many different bands and types of music that, I would pursue within the rock genre and really, begin to, become a fan of over the years, and that's all because of this album right here, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. I've told this story many times on the channel, but, I was familiar with the Beatles. Obviously, I knew their radio hits. I went to a record store, bought this album here because I thought, what the heck, it's the Beatles, and turned it on, and my mind was blown. Just an incredible record here, the perfect album from top to bottom. It's structured so well. It's the band during their psychedelic period here, trying to, pursue more intricate sounds here, experimenting with a number of different instruments and styles. So in that respect, it's really innovative, and in many other respects, it's innovative and distinctive as well, and would go on to help to really found a lot of subgenres in rock, influence so many as well, and really kick the Beatles into second gear here after, they had abandoned touring to pursue a different direction musically where they could take more chances in the studio and not have to worry about replicating it live. You could tell on this album that a lot of chances were being taken here, and it paid off massively, with a little help from my friends, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Getting Better, Fixing a Hole, She's Leaving Home, Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, When I'm 64, great underrated Paul McCartney song there, although I don't know if anything on this album is really underrated, let's be honest. Lovely Rita, and then of course A Day in the Life to close things out. In my opinion, the greatest rock song of all time. So when it comes down to it here, it doesn't get any better than this in the Beatles catalog, and so I had to include it on this list. Bit of a sentimental favorite, also a gateway record for me, but couldn't imagine going to a desert island and not having Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band with me. I'm not going to go to a desert island for 100 years. That brings some progressive rock with me. So with that in mind, next up, I'm going to go with In the Court of the Crimson King, the debut by King Crimson. Now, by the time of this release, there had been a few other progressive rock releases, but this is by far one of the most innovative and influential early prog rock albums ever made. Found founded upon, great mix of rock with jazz, classical, and symphonic music. I love the work by Robert Fripp here, the only consistent member in the King Crimson lineup throughout their entire careers. They, of course, had a million lineup changes here. I love the work by Greg Lake as well on lead vocals. Does an awesome job here. The track listing, of course, this is Essential King Crimson, 21st Century Schizoid Man, pretty heavy for its time. I Talk to the Wind is a great ambient track. I love the vocals on there by Greg Lake. Epitaph, Moonchild, and the Masterpiece, A Court of the Crimson King to close out this record here. 5 tracks in total. It's a perfect album, all killer, no filler. The band really knew how to maximize their time on this record, I think, and turn out just an absolute prog essential that still sounds, innovative and youthful to this day. I think it's aged extremely well, and when it comes to some of the best prog releases of all time, it's right up at the top. So if I was bringing prog with me to Abandoned Island, I would definitely have to bring in The Court of the Crimson King, an absolute masterpiece by the prog rock innovators King Crimson. From King Crimson to Kiss, 2 polar opposite bands here, but I gotta go with Love Gun by Kiss, my favorite album of theirs, and just, that one Kiss album that I think is just top to bottom, just about perfect, with the exception of And Then She Kissed Me, which, if this album ended with track number 9, Plaster Caster, it would be a perfect record from top to bottom, but the rest of the album speaks for itself. I Stole Your Love is a great opener. Christine 16, Got Love for Sale, Shock Me, Ace Frehley on lead vocals, his trademark track. Tomorrow and Tonight, Hooligan, great deep cuts there. Almost Human, awesome Gene's song. Love Gun, one of my favorite title tracks ever. Plaster Caster, like I had mentioned. So many great songs here on this record. This was the band really at the height of their popularity and turning out an incredible record here in 1977. So for me, I think it rivals Destroyer for their best work, and as far as I'm concerned, it's that one Kiss album that I think has aged better than any other in terms of the music on here. I mean, some of the lyrics, like the lyrics on Christine 16, have not aged very well, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's, it's an album that sounds very vibrant, the production is fantastic, and it's just one of those records that, I go back to more and more than any other album in the Kiss catalog, which seems to be a recurring theme in this list, and that's kind of on purpose, right? These are the albums that I can't live without, so if I was going to an abandoned island, this is one of them that I would absolutely take with me. Since we're on the topic of Love Gun, I thought I would share this real quick here. This is an original Love Gun ad from a newspaper back in 1977. A cool piece of Kiss memorabilia here I recently acquired, and I believe up in the corner here there's a date. Yeah, July 16th, 1977 here. So really cool, really happy to have it in my collection. Again, I love the Love Gun record here, so I think it's a really cool piece of history in my collection. Original newspaper advertisement for the upcoming album at the time. So, while I was on the topic of Love Gun, I thought I would share that with you guys here today. For metal here, first one I'm going to show is Ride the Lightning by Metallica. Have to bring this one with me, So when it comes to some of the best Metallica albums out there, this is, in my opinion, their best. Their sophomore record here, it's an absolute thrash metal essential as far as I'm concerned. Just an absolutely loaded album here. Fight Fire with Fire, Ride the Lightning, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Fade to Black, Trapped Under Ice has got a great riff taken by Kirk Hammett when he left Exodus, so really thrashy stuff there. Even Escape, I know the band don't like that song. It's kind of commercial, sounds a little bit like, something that the band wouldn't have recorded at the time, but, I enjoy it. It's a fine track. It's a very solid deep cut considering the band don't like to play it at all, so it's pretty deep. Creeping Death, of course, an essential, so much better live, but awesome on the album as well. Then Call of Cthulhu, the great instrumental, close out this record here. Just really interesting to see how the band had matured so much in their sound and really come a long way. Probably a lot of thanks to Cliff Burton on the bass, for, teaching the band, a lot about, music and how to structure a song, things of that nature. So the band really came a long way from Kill 'Em All to Ride the Lightning here, taking chances in the studio for the first time, doing some new things. Of course, Fade to Black was pretty experimental and different for them at the time. People thought they were selling out by making a ballad. Oh, how they, how little they knew about, what Metallica would end up coming out years later. But, when it comes down to it here, this is a great record. Ride the Lightning is a very complete Metallica album. It's thrashy, it's got some experimentation and some great musicianship by Cliff Burton, who was really at the helm here in terms of being the band's musical leader. So with that in mind, I just have to bring this one with me. Ride the Lightning by Metallica, my favorite Metallica album of all time. How about Operation Mindcrime by Queensrcyhe? Just a great concept album here. I love a good concept album. It's one of my favorite things in rock and metal, so I can really get into, a good concept record here. And this album, I mean, you could make this into a novel. It's just a fantastic concept here, and the musicianship, of course, that accompanies it is incredible. Looking at the track listing here, there's not a bad song on here. Every song contributes to the concept and the story being told. It is great. Revolution Calling, Operation Operation Mindcrime, Speak, Spreading the Disease, The Mission, Sweet Sister Mary, The Needle Lies, Breaking the Silence, I Don't Believe in Love, Eyes of a Stranger. Every song in here is a banger. Jeff Tate on lead vocals does an amazing job here. One of the all-time best 80s metal vocalists with just a great performance here from top to bottom on this record. It's essential Queensrcyhe, and for my money, they never made an album as good as this one. So this is absolutely their peak, their prime, and one of those albums that I think absolutely defines 80s progressive metal that would really pave the way for 90s prog. So with that in mind, again, another one of those albums that I just couldn't leave behind. Next, we have the greatest grunge album of all time, and that's Dirt by Alice in Chains. Very heavy record here by the band. Great sophomore release in terms of for their full-length studio album, sophomore release, right? I think they released Sap before this record, but in terms of full-length albums, this is a great follow-up to Facelift from 1990. And, when it comes to picking an Alice in Chains album for this list, I almost went with Jar of Flies, the EP, but then I thought, that's an EP. And if I'm bringing 10 albums with me to an abandoned island, a desert island for the rest of my life, I'd rather bring a full-length album here. So I think Dirt definitely does fit the bill here. Great maturity by the band, really coming into their own lyrically, I think, on this album compared to their debut with tracks like Them Bones, Damn That River, Rain When I Die, Down at a Hole, Rooster, Dirt, Hate to Feel, Angry Chair, and Wood. So it's phenomenal stuff, and like I said before, I believe it's the greatest grunge album of all time, and if you've followed my channel in the past, you probably know that I think Alice in Chains are more on the metal side of grunge than anything else. So this is one album I wanted to include in the metal category. Gotta go with Dirt by Alice in Chains. Another album that, if you follow my channel, you know how much I love it. My favorite album of all time, The Crimson Idol by WASP. WASP are so underrated, and this album is, likewise, very underrated. An album that nobody talks about, but another great concept record here. Like I was saying with Operation Mindcrime, love a good concept. I think Blackie Lawless's vocals on here are fantastic. Blackie was kind of operating WASP as a one-man show. He was the only consistent member at this point, bringing in Bob Kulick, bringing in Frankie Banali on the drums. So you have some great work being done here by, the guys he was collaborating with at this point, really pulling together a great WASP album out of thin air, because the band were pretty much no more by that point. I believe this album was initially going to be considered a Blackie Lawless solo project, but then titled WASP to see if maybe it sold better, which it really didn't, which is a shame. One of those underrated albums of 1992. Flew under the radar, but absolutely should not have, with tracks on here like The Invisible Boy, Arena of Pleasure, Chainsaw Charlie, just one of the best metal songs of all time. Dr. Rocker, I Am One, The Idol, Hold On to My Heart, classic WASP ballad, and then The Great Misconceptions of Me, an epic to close out the record here. Produced by Blackie Lawless, he does a tremendous job here on this album, and like I said before, my favorite album of all time. Have to take it with me. Last one here, I'm going to go with A Matter of Life and Death by Iron Maiden. Maiden are my favorite band of all time, so very tricky to pick just one from Iron Maiden, but again, if you follow my channel, I've mentioned before, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but this is my favorite Iron Maiden record of all time. This is the band, really mixing that proggy sound they were going to pursue for the rest of, the 2000s up until now. With that heavy Iron Maiden sound. So there's still, some great riffage on here, still a great crunch to this record. Tracks like Different World, These Colors Don't Run, Brighter Than a Thousand Suns, The Pilgrim, The Longest Day, really heavy stuff. I love the riffs on Reincarnation of Benjamin Brigg, For the Greater Good of God, great song. Was really happy when they brought it back for Legacy of the Beast several years ago. The Legacy to close things out, Lord of Light. I mean, the whole album here is so underrated, and, an album that I wish they would bring more of this stuff back into their live set. They toured the album in its entirety back in 2006, 2007. It did not go over too well with the fan base, which is an absolute shame, because I could just say that if I was at those shows, I would have been loving it, but unfortunately I missed that tour. I was too young. But one of those albums here by Iron Maiden that, I listen to very frequently, and so picking an Iron Maiden album to take with me was really hard. I was also contemplating bringing Power Slave or, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, if I was theoretically going to a desert island, but ultimately I gotta go with my favorite Maiden album of all time, A Matter of Life and Death. So that wraps up this video here. Thought it'd be fun to count down my 10 rock and metal desert island albums, 10 albums I can't live without. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you don't miss a new upload, and please let me know down in the comment section below what are some desert island albums that you cannot live without. I want to hear from you, so please let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, as well as your thoughts on my list here and my picks. I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.